Well, welcome everyone to Ozarks tonight. I'm Brian Calfetta. We were just talking before we started about the free stuff that apparently some politicians are talking about having everybody pay for, including education, healthcare, and Amy, you were about to bring up
the early childhood education, so pre-kindergarten.
Let's put those on the table then and have a little discussion about this. Good idea or not about just giving everybody a pass on their education, healthcare, and the early childhood? The idea would be what? That it helps people who are blowing a lot of money that they don't have on these services. It helps everybody kind of get ahead.
Correct. So like if we start with the idea of education, some states do this, or they're at least greatly reduced in the cost of education for residents. Right now, the cost and the weight that it is on someone who has incurred the debt of college education is now one of the #1 reasons that individuals are not able to purchase a home, not able to purchase a car, have bad credit, because they've not been able to make the payments. It's you enter school with the hopes and dreams of making a lot of money. You enter as an entry-level position, and now you've got a $700 a month school bill that you really didn't calculate probably into your total budget when you started with good intention.
You know, I think that the value of something isn't a dollar amount. It's what, if you want to call it sweat equity, what something, you know, what somebody is going to put into something. And so I think inherently anything becomes devalued. The importance of it to a person becomes less if it's something that they don't have to work for. And once you have that sort of relationship diminish, then people appreciate it less, they take it less seriously, and they oftentimes, you know, they don't best utilize it. Services,
it's easier to skip class when you didn't pay for it.
Yeah, so how do you push back on that then? Because it's human nature. If you are now going to get something without really putting any skin in the game, as they say, does that diminish your willingness to really sweat it out?
Well, that's the idea of free. You know, we talk about with early childhood education, the idea of free. Well, we're spending millions of dollars in our state already.
And those kids don't know, they're too young.
Well, but so the reason that I got to go to school was because I received scholarships and I received grants. Otherwise, I would not have my undergraduate and I wouldn't have my master's degree.
Oh, you worked for those, though.
I do have some student loan, and I worked hard as a student. I worked hard. So when we talk about sweat equity, sometimes it is I worked really hard to be a student to graduate, and I had some skin in the game in my undergraduate, but I received a financial package that made it possible. Otherwise, I would not be sitting where I am today.
But I think the proposals are it's just going to be covered. You're not going to have to do the sort of performance and the applications and all the sort of things you've got to do now.
ACT requirements and things like that.
But you wouldn't have to worry about lining up scholarships and grants. It would just be done.
But the universities are still going to be responsible for doing some of that, especially if we look at those that are private. So, you know, the system isn't going to just completely go away. We could look at other states that have done different models for this to where, you know, we aren't seeing people who are just pretending to go to college because it's the thing you're supposed to do. It's still a huge commitment. And very rarely is someone just saying, well, because I got education, I'm going to go sit in class and spend the next 4 years of my life giving up time.
Well, let me tell you.
As a college professor, they weed themselves out very quickly, very quickly.
Well, I tell you from my own personal experience, I know I was much more mindful of my $200-300 books that I had to purchase for college as opposed to the ones that were handed me free in high school. Just toss aside, of no interest in. Man, those things, because I could get money back, right? Well, there was a value to them.
What about health care? So someone faces $500,000 worth of medical bills. That's not something that they just maybe sat there and had happen to them. I mean, people a lot of times can't control that. Right. What about Medicare for all, or a similar type of package?
So in my doctorate, I did extensive research on this. My doctorate is in health sciences, and we looked at global health and all the different models that are out there. And there is not a perfect model. As soon as you say, look at Japan, you'll find 10 things about it. As soon as you say, look at Canada's, people start talking about the long wait that it takes. My sister lives in social medicine in Spain, has amazing care, and there's these myths that it's a 3-month wait to get in. it isn't. They're getting quality care very quickly, but then you look at what that means to the country. And financially then, is it the role of government to mandate this? And we've seen in other countries that have tried to roll it out that it obviously becomes very taxing, no pun intended, on the government as well as the people.
Listen to you. So you would not be a free healthcare for all advocate.
What I am saying is the systems we're putting into place or talking about putting into place are being done too quickly. They're being done
as
without
campaign promises.
They're
like stunts.
They're being done as a political stunt, and they aren't really being done as let's take the best of multiple countries and even look at smaller scale and ramp up. It's more of we've got to throw this out there, and there's so much waste in Medicaid and Medicare and fraud. And so we don't even have fraud under control. So as soon as we do a government-run system, we already have billions being lost in fraud. We've got to figure out how we're doing what we're doing now and make sure that we put in better stops before we just say that we're going to provide this service to everyone. We're seeing that locally here with Mercy, having to let individuals go because Medicaid, we didn't do Medicaid expansion. We're not getting the funds in. And so it's such a big issue to cover in 1 minute.
Yeah, speaking of that, 10 seconds, Nick, last word.
No, well, I would agree. It's such a great point that there's no perfect system. And a lot of times people, free market system like myself, they want to ignore that sometimes bad things happen. It's not about finding a system that's perfect, that everyone gets everything they want and it costs nothing, because that is never going to happen. But it's what system does work best. Well, I find that there's no incentive better for people to take care of their health, particularly when it comes to the financial end of it, if they are responsible for it themselves. And I feel that we do sort of this runaround to where we absolve people oftentimes of their own health responsibilities. And then we try and figure out how can we get them to be responsible for themselves. And we kind of create this Rube Goldberg effect.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Rubes are not these two. Amy Blancett, Nick Reed, appreciate it. We'll be back.